Hey guys, as usual, I'm still on break from doing the narcissism content. I want to give you guys sort of an update and an insight into the current COVID situation. I'm a database developer. I'm a data analyst. I've been a software developer for 15 years. All day, every day, I look at data, and so I have my own code that I wrote that lets me look at the government data for myself, just in its raw, unfiltered, unpresented form. So I kind of have a bit of a unique perspective on it. And so I want to kind of clue you guys in as to what's in the data and why you're seeing that. And it's this: the government data systems are inherently incompatible with medical data systems. And this comes from personal experience. I have worked in data integration for a number of years. I have worked with people who were from the Methodist hospital system here in Houston. So I never directly worked with the hospital, but I've worked with plenty of consultants who have worked for Methodist and Memorial Hermann. And so I'm familiar with what kind of data systems that they use, at least in those hospitals, but many other hospitals as well. And it comes down to this: the government data systems use a technology called SQL, as in structured query language, so SQL. Medical systems use something literally called NoSQL, right? No SQL. The difference between the two, besides just SQL and NoSQL, medical systems literally do not use SQL, okay? So there's your clue right there. They're naturally incompatible. To put it briefly, SQL is very structured, very rigid, very structured and rigid. NoSQL, on the other hand, is very squishy, okay? And I'm not going to get too deep into that. Suffice it to say, SQL is what you're used to seeing with tables, Excel workbooks, Microsoft Access, that kind of stuff. Anything you have rows and columns on, that's SQL. NoSQL is very similar to social media. So Facebook is a good example of a NoSQL data system. You know, you can attach videos, you can attach photos, you have your friends have friends, friends of friends for friends, right? And everything that gets uploaded into Facebook goes into this giant data repository called a data lake, okay? So everything that everybody uploads just goes to this giant just pool storage space, one huge hard drive somewhere, right? And so that's about the limit that I'm gonna explain the difference. You're welcome to research these topics. They're fun if you're a nerd like me. But it comes down to medical systems have very squishy data. If you're a patient and they have a patient record of you, they can attach whatever they want to whatever part of your file that they have. So, you know, if you're Bob going into the hospital, you're Bob, and then they can attach whatever MP3 music file they want, or a PDF, or, you know, whatever documents for your symptoms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They have all the freedom in the world to do that. And their software developers are the ones that sort of place limits on just how much flexibility they have. But they have quite a bit of flexibility. You don't have that in the government data systems, okay? In the government data system, you're either a COVID case or a COVID death. Yes or no? That's it. You're a COVID case, you're a COVID death. Well, the problem is it's more complex than that, right? We all know now COVID has a multiplicity of symptoms and a number of different ways to die. COVID creates a huge storm of blood clots in your system. The autopsies that they did, they found hundreds of tiny little blood clots in everybody's internal organs. Okay, it infects your bloodstream. It gets inside your blood vessels. Your blood tries to fight it with clots to stop the injury, right? And so any part of your body that's susceptible to blood clots is fair game, okay? So, are you a COVID death? Yes or no? Well, did you have symptoms? Yes. What were they? You list off the symptoms. How did you die? Was it a stroke, heart attack, kidney failure, liver failure, respiratory failure, lack of oxygen, hypoxia? What was it? Okay, there's a lot of different ways to die from COVID. So add on top of that, the test is not always that reliable. So now the question comes, let's just assume, and I'm going to illustrate this for you, okay? The problem with data. Let's assume that a patient comes in, they have obvious COVID symptoms. Doctors see it enough now. They know what it looks like. So somebody who comes in with obvious COVID symptoms, they take the COVID test. They test positive, right? Clearly it's COVID. They die of a stroke. Is that a COVID death? Yes, that is a COVID death, right? Obvious symptoms. Test positive. They die. Okay? Now, imagine that we said 10,000 people all came to the hospitals, all presented with obvious COVID symptoms, all tested positive for COVID. All 10,000 of them had a stroke. Did all 10,000 of them die from COVID? And now the question is, probably not. Probably the vast majority of them did, but there could be a few little subtle cases in there where they had a stroke and survived, but then the hypoxia got them. Or maybe they were diabetic and couldn't pull through from the stroke, right? So there's all of these additional factors to be considered. Well, in order to work with the government, you either are a COVID death or you're not. Period. And that requires a lot of forethought into how they report a COVID death. These medical systems are too big, too complex, too squishy, and too complicated to be able to distill it down to just a simple number. Just hands down, right? Whenever somebody dies, they might have 38 to 50 different data points or even hundreds of data points on this person. They hook you up to a monitor. They've got days upon days of data about oxygen level, heart rate, blood pressure, vitals. All of that information is in there, right? In order to call you a COVID death, it's gonna be difficult enough just to get it that distilled from a single hospital, let alone multiple hospitals, let alone an entire state of hospitals or an entire country from all the countries in the world. Okay? No matter what you do with data, it will not be precise, period. And that starts from inevitably, in the inherent difference in their data architecture, okay? And it gets even heavier than that, because a 1 doesn't necessarily equal a 1. And a 1's not exactly equal to a 1.0. And 1 to the power of 0 in scientific notation is not exactly 1.0 either, but it's not 1, but they're all the same number. And even if you write 1 in text, that text 1 is different from the numeric 1 and different from the 1.0. So there are literally about 12 different ways to express just the number 1. And none of them are equal. So when you have that level of complexity at the source, good luck getting any kind of consistent reporting. So when you have people that are looking at the data and they're saying, this is a hoax, look at the data, they're obviously inflating the numbers, or they're hiding the numbers, they're manipulating the numbers. No, it has a lot more to do with how individual hospitals change their reporting. As we learn more about the virus, they have to update the way that they upload their data. We learn more every day. Back in January or February, when people died, we thought that a stroke was not a COVID death. It turns out it is. So now we got to go back and correct that, right? Well, what if they don't correct it? Well, then the data is wrong, okay? So it looks like people are manipulating the data. Well, they are. You have to manipulate the data just to get it out of medical systems. You can't, it's unavoidable. in order to get soft, squishy medical data out of a complex data system into something as simple as the government's reporting engine, you have to come up with a very, very solid set of business rules and tests for data in order to come up with whether or not somebody is a COVID death. And that's the reason why they have distilled it down to simply, they mark it a COVID death. If you test positive for the COVID, you're a COVID death. Doesn't matter how you die. That's pretty much the only option that they have when you're dealing with crossing the system boundaries between SQL and NoSQL. Like, there couldn't be two more opposite technologies than a technology that's called SQL and another one that's NoSQL. Yeah. So it's complicated, okay? It's complicated. And on top of all of that, this is something I've learned just 15 years dealing with computer systems. There's always an uncommunicable amount of entropy in your numbers. And this is kind of sort of a abstract topic. So I'm going to use something from my personal life, okay? Some of you, not all of you, but some of you know, my mother died in my arms in 2015. In front of my family, in front of my children. It was a horrific, traumatic event. It was not a good day. Very traumatic for everybody, and very hard for our family to deal with. She had Alzheimer's, okay? My mother is a 1 in at least 50 different reporting systems, reporting dashboards all over the world. She's a 1, okay? I'm a 1. Depending on what data system you look at, she might be a -1. She's no longer here. She might also be a 0 because she's no longer here, right? I'm a 1. I'm a 0. I'm a -1. So are you. Now think about that. There's a lot more to you than just a 1 or a 0. But that's all that we get reported as. So even if we had the most accurate data reporting in the world, and I think we kind of do already, but let's say that the data is infallible, that everything is perfect. It still doesn't fully capture and describe what it's referring to, right? We're all people, okay? We're not numbers, we're people. Data is always not enough, okay? Data is never enough to describe anyone or anything in the world. It kind of describes it, but not really. And that's just what I've learned. Data is, even in its perfect form, data about the real world is never good enough. It's not. So what do we need to do? Well, we're all stuck in this in the US. We're like that, one of those couples where you break up, it's over, but you still live together and you're both still on the lease, but the lease is nearly up, so you're both just trying to figure out how the hell you're going to coexist and live in the same space until one of you gets to move out. That's kind of where we're at, okay? And we all have different views of this thing, and I'm not here to tell you that your view is right and that mine is wrong, because no way in hell am I ever going to... No, I'm kidding. We all have our own viewpoints. And so the analogy I love to give, or metaphor, or whatever you want to call it, okay? You have two cities on a hill. You have two cities. One is on a hill. One is in a valley. The people in those cities both are going to have very, very different viewpoints on how they feel about rain, okay? The people in the valley consider hard, heavy rains to be very deadly and very threatening. People up on the hill, not so much. People up on the hill hearing how deadly rain is and what a danger rain is, That's not going to make any sense to the people on the hill. They're going to say, oh, that's just a hoax. Rain's not dangerous, right? Rain is not deadly. It's fun. We run out and we go and we play in it, right? Well, the other city might be like, well, rain is dangerous. It's deadly. It causes these massive floods, causes massive mudslides, landslides. People lose their life all the time when it rains. We have to be ready in our boats, right? To those two different cities, you get two people from those cities, if they understand nothing about where the other person comes from, they're going to sit there and argue in circles over and over and over. And that is what we are doing. And it won't change until we all sit down and talk to each other. And I'll leave you with this. The one thing that's going to come out of all of this is that this country is going to have to get out of this through unity. We're not strong enough to get out of this acting as individuals. We need the strength of unity to beat this and to get through it. That's going to be the only way out. And who knows how long that's going to take, but that is what it will take. I look forward to that day, however long it takes to get there. And I hope I'm still here to see it. I may not be. I might just be a video at this point. We'll find out. Thank you very much for watching. Do please like, comment, or share. I love to hear from you guys. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you on the next video.